There was a hotel key on the nightstand. Not mine. Room 809. Not our room. I stared at it for 5 full minutes, waiting for some part of my brain to offer a reasonable explanation. Maybe she picked it up by mistake. Maybe it was from a spa. Maybe she was holding it for someone else. Maybe I was still dreaming. I wasn't. I was sitting on the edge of our bed, my shoelaces half tied, her pillow still warm behind me. She had just left for a run. It was 6:12 a.m. Daria doesn't run. And she never forgets things. But she left that goddamn key card like it was a message, or maybe a test. And I was too tired to pretend I didn't understand what it meant. I didn't pick it up. I just sat there, hands clenched, throat tight, like I was on the edge of puking or crying or both. Then I opened my phone. I don't know why. Maybe muscle memory. Maybe self-destruction. No new messages. But her location history was still on from last night. She doesn't know I check it. That's not something I'm proud of. She was at the Argyle Suites from 1:47 a.m. to 3:09 a.m. I looked up that place. They only rent by the hour. I wish I could say this was the first sign. That I was shocked. But the truth is, I'd seen it coming like headlights in a fog. I just refused to step off the road. You want to know the worst part? This all started because I tried to plan a weekend away. One damn weekend. It was supposed to be a reset. A getaway. Just the two of us. No work, no noise, no passive-aggressive silences between TV commercials. When I told her, she smirked. Not the cute kind of smirk she used to give me when I messed up dinner or spilled wine. This one was hollow. Mean. She tilted her head and said, "Are you even sure we're still a couple?" Just like that. 10 years together. 6 years married. 1 dog. 2 miscarriages. All of it shrunk down to a question she asked like she was ordering coffee. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stood there like an idiot and nodded like that made sense. And now, 2 days later, there's a key to someone else's room on our nightstand. No note. No explanation. Just her echoing words still playing in my head like a scratched record. Are you even sure we're still a couple? No, Daria. I'm not. But I'm about to find out who room 809 belongs to. And after that, I don't know what happens next. I told myself I wouldn't go. That I was better than that. That maybe I could just sit down with her, calmly, like 2 adults, and ask the kind of questions that don't tear your soul in half. But somewhere between brushing my teeth and pretending to make breakfast, I was already planning how I'd get to the Argyle Suites without her noticing. I didn't eat. I couldn't. My hands were shaking, and I dropped the spoon into the sink so loudly it made the dog bark. Daria texted me an hour later. Went out with Jess. Be back later. No mention of the hotel key. No mention of the run. Just cold, hollow logistics. So I got in the car. I drove in silence. No music. Just the sound of the engine and my own chest cracking open with every mile. Argyle Suites looked exactly like I expected. Cheap, beige, and too quiet. One of those buildings where the blinds are always half closed and the reception desk has a plastic bell, but no one behind it. I stood outside room 809 for maybe 3 minutes, not moving. Just staring at the numbers, like they were going to rearrange into something else. My stomach felt like a washing machine, and I thought for a second I might actually pass out. But I slid the keycard into the slot and heard that quiet, soul-destroying click. The room was empty. Clean sheets. Open suitcase. 2 glasses on the table, both used. One of them had coral pink lipstick on the rim. I remember staring at it, trying to convince myself it could be hers. That maybe she had stayed here alone for some reason I didn't understand. But deep down I already knew. The closet door was cracked open. Hanging inside was a man's blazer. Cheap, shiny material. The kind of thing you buy in a rush, not style. There was cologne in the air. Not mine. It was sweeter. Younger. Like something a guy in his 20s would wear to a club he's too old for. My breath caught in my throat. And for a second, I genuinely didn't know if I'd scream or vomit. I checked the bathroom. A single black hair tie on the sink. The same kind Daria wears. And her phone charger, the one with the peeling fabric near the plug. She was here. With someone else. She charged her phone in this room while I sat at home wondering if she liked the cabin I picked. But that's not what broke me. What broke me was the notebook I found under the bed. It looked cheap, like something you'd get for free at a conference. It had initials on the cover in gold. E.G. Inside were 6 pages of handwritten notes. Messy, rushed, some words underlined hard enough to rip the paper. I didn't recognize the handwriting. but I recognized the name on the first page. Daria Lowell, in quotation marks. Like it was a joke. Or a code name. The notes read like someone rehearsing a story. There were bullet points. Things like stick to the Denver lie, don't mention the lake house, and, worst of all, if he cracks, pivot to therapy angle. If he cracks. Like I was a puzzle. A loose tile on the floor. I sat on the edge of that motel bed with the notebook in my lap and realized I hadn't been living in denial. I'd been living in someone else's performance. Every fight, every sigh, every carefully chosen phrase, scripted. And I still didn't know who E.G. was. But I was going to find out. Because I had a feeling this wasn't just cheating. This was something else. I took the notebook home with me. Slid it under my hoodie like a criminal, even though no one was there to stop me. I drove back with my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The kind of pounding that doesn't come from adrenaline. It comes from the deep, sick understanding that your reality is about to split in two. I didn't go inside right away. I sat in the car with the engine running, notebook on my lap, windows fogged up like I was hiding from something. I flipped through the pages again. The same scribbles. Daria Lowell, underlined twice, followed by Denver lie, therapy angle, and one phone number written without a name. Just numbers. 10 digits that felt like they held a loaded gun to my temple. I saved the number in my phone under don't. But 20 minutes later, I called it anyway. The dial tone nearly made me throw up. It rang 4 times, then someone picked up. Male voice. Young. Relaxed. Yeah, he said like he already knew who was calling. I didn't speak at first. I didn't even know what I wanted to say. I was shaking, trying to find words. Then he said it again, this time quieter, slower, like he was sure. Lowell. My mouth went dry. I hadn't given a name. I hadn't even spoken. I hung up. I stared at my phone for at least 5 minutes after that, like the screen might explain something to me. It didn't. Instead, Daria walked through the front door, carrying takeout like she hadn't just detonated a grenade in the middle of our marriage. She smiled, said she brought Thai food, kissed me on the cheek, and I stood there frozen, holding my phone behind my back like it was evidence. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. She looked so normal. Hair slightly damp, like she'd just showered. No makeup. No shame. She asked how my day was, and I lied. Told her I was tired. Said I needed to lie down. She didn't follow me. She just unpacked the food and turned on the TV, humming something under her breath. Like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't left the key. Like I hadn't just heard a stranger say my name before I ever spoke. Later that night, I waited for her to fall asleep before I grabbed her phone from the nightstand. I knew the passcode. I'd always known it. But this time, it didn't work. She'd changed it. That was the first time I cried in years. I didn't sob. I didn't make a sound. Just lay there, phone in hand, while silent tears soaked into the pillow. I didn't recognize her anymore. And maybe I never really had. But the next morning, I got a message from an unknown number. Just one sentence. You weren't supposed to find the notebook. No punctuation. No name. And I swear, for a second, I forgot how to breathe. I didn't reply to the message. I couldn't. I stared at it for half an hour, fingers hovering over the screen, rewriting a dozen versions of who is this, and deleting them all. No follow-up came. No typing bubbles. Just that one, quiet, perfectly targeted sentence, like a sniper shot through the glass. You weren't supposed to find the notebook. I didn't sleep that night. I watched Daria breathe beside me, steady and calm, completely untouched by the wildfire raging inside my chest. I studied her like a stranger. The way her lips twitched slightly when she shifted. The faint crease between her eyebrows. I wondered how many times she'd lied to my face while looking exactly like this. Peaceful. Innocent. By morning, I had made up my mind. No more guessing. No more spiraling. I needed confrontation, not answers from strangers. I waited until she was brushing her teeth, leaned against the doorframe like I was just making small talk, and dropped it casually. Almost too casually. Hey, random question. Who's E.G.? She froze. Not in an obvious way, not like in a movie, where they drop the toothbrush and gasp. No, it was a micro-freeze. Her hand stopped mid-brush, just for a second. Her eyes met mine in the mirror, but her face, it changed. Something flickered behind it, like someone backstage missing their lighting cue. Then, just as fast, she smiled and said through the foam, "No idea." Why? I shrugged. Found a notebook. In the garage. Said E.G. on the front. Thought it might be yours. She rinsed. laughed, way too loud, and said, "Nope, not mine. Probably one of your brother's old ones." Then she kissed me on the cheek and walked out of the room before I could respond. But I caught it. That flicker, that half-second panic that cracked through her composure. It wasn't just guilt. It was fear. That day, I called my brother just to rule it out. He had no idea what I was talking about. He hasn't been in our garage in 3 years. So I went back to the notebook, now hidden under a floorboard in the guest room closet, and I flipped to the last page again. There was a word I hadn't noticed before, written faintly at the bottom corner like a footnote. Just 4 letters, kite. I didn't know what it meant. A code name? A location? A person? I Googled it with the initials E.G. and found nothing. Searched texts, emails, still nothing. But then I remembered an old external drive we used to back up our photos before everything went to the cloud. Buried under boxes in the hall closet, labeled Archive 2017. I plugged it into my laptop and started scrolling through folders. Family trips, Thanksgiving, random nonsense. And then I found one titled Kite. Inside were only 2 files. One video, one PDF. Both password protected. My heart sank. I was so close, but locked out. Until I had an idea. I typed in her old nickname for me. The one she hadn't said in over a year. It worked. The video opened first. Low quality. Filmed on a phone. It started with Daria sitting on a motel bed. Same coral lipstick. Same dead eyes I'd seen lately, only colder. And then, off-screen, a voice said, "State your name and why you agreed." And she did. Calmly. Like it was a business transaction. "My name is Daria Lowell. I agreed to proceed with Phase 2. He has no idea." I paused the video. I didn't want to know what Phase 2 was. But I already knew who he was. Me. And whatever this was, it wasn't just cheating. It was something intentional. The video ended abruptly after she said those words. He has no idea. I sat there in the guest room, staring at the frozen frame of her face, that practiced calm, the faint smirk like she'd rehearsed it. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't even anger. It was detachment, like she was filing paperwork, not gutting the man she lived with. I didn't watch the PDF file. Not yet. I couldn't. My chest hurt, my palms were slick, and the walls suddenly felt like they were closing in. I needed air. I needed noise. I needed anything but silence. So I left the house and drove without a destination. I just let the road eat the miles while I tried to figure out when exactly reality flipped on me. Because now that I was looking for it, I saw all the red flags I'd ignored stacked like a bonfire. Take my job, for example. I got laid off 6 months ago. No warning, no severance, just a cold, sterile Zoom call at 9 a.m. from someone I'd never met. At the time, I blamed corporate restructuring, bad timing, all the usual excuses. But Daria didn't even flinch. She said the right things, sure. We'll figure it out. We'll get through this. But her eyes were somewhere else. And then she started working late more often. Going on wellness weekends with her friend Jess. Coming home with perfume I didn't recognize. I thought the job loss had changed me. Made me paranoid. Weak. But now I see it for what it was. Phase 2. That's what she called it. It started with me losing my job. It started with me needing her more than she needed me. I pulled over at a rest stop and just sat in the parking lot watching people walk in and out like nothing in the world was falling apart. An old man in a fishing hat, a kid eating a banana, a woman with pink headphones. I felt like I was watching a movie I didn't belong in anymore. Then I opened my phone again and scrolled through her contact list. I don't know what I expected. Maybe some hidden alias, a fake name, a clue. But then I saw it, a contact labeled Eva G. Yoga. My stomach turned. I tapped the number. It was the same one from the notebook. The same one that had answered with Lowell before I even said a word. Eva G. E.G. It wasn't a man. It was a woman. A yoga instructor. Except Daria's never done yoga. Not once. She hated it. Said it made her anxious. So why would she have a yoga instructor saved under a nickname? And why would she be listed in a notebook filled with instructions and lies? I didn't call. I couldn't. Not yet. But I did something worse. I looked up Eva G. on social media. It didn't take long. Her profile was public. She was younger than I expected, maybe late 20s. Sharp features, soft eyes, constant photos in remote retreats and dimly lit studios. Inspirational captions, mantras, self-love, all the usual surface-level nonsense. But buried halfway down her grid was a photo that stopped my heart cold. Daria was in it. Not posing. Not front and center. Just in the background, blurred but unmistakable, sitting across from Eva at an outdoor cafe, looking directly at the camera. And smiling. The post was from 2 months ago. During the same weekend she told me she was visiting her sick aunt. That night, after Daria fell asleep, I finally opened the PDF on the drive. It was a contract. 3 pages long. Header: Kite Consulting Group. Subject line: Voluntary Emotional Separation Trial, Phase 2. And right there, in digital ink, was Daria's signature. Beneath it, my name, pre-typed in the blank space beside the word subject. I hadn't been cheated on. I'd been enrolled in something. Without my knowledge. And apparently, the experiment was only halfway done. I read the contract 3 times. I couldn't help myself. Every sentence pulled me deeper into this grotesque reality I hadn't agreed to, but had apparently been living in. Subject will not be informed of the trial's scope prior to the conclusion of Phase 2. Signatory agrees to maintain deception protocols unless escalation protocol is triggered. Escalation protocol. That phrasing made my skin crawl. My name was printed under subject. Not partner. Not husband. Just a faceless variable in an emotional case study. A lab rat with a mortgage. Clause 4C is what broke me. I remember it word for word. In the event of accidental discovery, the signatory is advised to enact disassociation measures immediately, including but not limited to 1. Feigned confusion. 2. Denial of involvement. 3. Reframing of events as emotional instability on part of subject. It was like reading a manual on how to gaslight someone without leaving fingerprints. I kept thinking about the day she laughed at my weekend getaway plan. The way she said, "Are you even sure we're still a couple?" That line wasn't improvised. It was planted, meant to trigger a response. Probably logged into a spreadsheet somewhere with notes like subject exhibited passivity or subject did not challenge withdrawal of affection. And Eva, EEG. She wasn't just a yoga instructor. She was a handler. That's the only word that makes sense now. She was guiding Daria through the process. Probably coaching her on how to behave, how to pull back just enough to make me question myself without walking away entirely. Emotional separation. Not divorce. Not a break. A trial. As if our marriage was a thesis paper and I was just some living data point. I barely slept that night. I laid next to her, rigid, staring at the ceiling while her breathing remained steady. She kept reaching for me in her sleep, curling her leg over mine like muscle memory, and I wanted to scream. Because the warmth didn't mean safety anymore. It meant surveillance. Performance. I started noticing all the little things that didn't feel real anymore. The perfectly timed laughs. The sudden apologies. The way she'd let me win arguments in the last few months. I thought I was finally standing up for myself. But now I wonder if she was just collecting results. Measuring behavioral change. The next morning, I called in sick to the freelance gig I had picked up after losing my job. I told Daria I was going to see a friend. She barely looked up from her tea, just nodded, told me to be safe, and smiled. That same empty smile from the motel video. I got in the car and drove across town, straight to the return address listed in the contract metadata, a converted warehouse on the industrial edge of the city. The plaque by the door just said Kite in minimalist font. I didn't have a plan. I wasn't even sure I'd go in. But I walked to the front desk and asked if Eva G. was available. The receptionist didn't even blink. She picked up the phone, whispered something, and then handed me a visitor badge. Room 312. 3rd floor. All white walls, white doors, white silence. When I entered, she was already waiting. Eva, the same woman from the Instagram photo. Calm, poised, smiling like a therapist in a pharmaceutical ad. She didn't look surprised. In fact, she motioned for me to sit before I said anything. Lowell, she said warmly, folding her hands. You're earlier than expected. I didn't sit. I just stood there, holding the contract. What is this? I asked. What the hell is this? She nodded slowly. You're here, which means the protocol held until Phase 3. That's impressive. You processed the breadcrumb trail exactly on schedule. I felt like I was going to explode. This isn't therapy. This isn't coaching. You manipulated my life. My marriage. Without my consent. Eva stood then, hands still calmly folded in front of her. It was never about your consent. It was about observation. Transformation. Phase 1 was about routine disruption. Phase 2 tested adaptive behaviors. Now, Phase 3 begins. I took a step back. I'm not part of any damn experiment. She tilted her head slightly. You've been part of it for years, Lowell. You just didn't know what you were participating in. Then she smiled wider. And neither did Daria. I stood there frozen, my mouth half open, trying to form a sentence that didn't sound like the beginning of a breakdown. What do you mean? Neither did Daria. I finally managed, my voice quieter than I wanted it to be. Eva didn't blink. She just walked around the desk, heels echoing softly on the polished concrete floor like she was giving a tour. You think Daria was the architect, she said, almost amused. She was just as much a subject as you. We enrolled her first. Yes, but she thought she was the one studying you. That was Phase 1. The illusion of control. We monitored how long it would take before she started breaking protocol herself. Before she got emotionally attached again. Before guilt began to override process. I felt something in my chest collapse. I sat down without thinking, like gravity had just shifted and I couldn't fight it. So she didn't know? She wasn't lying to me because she wanted to? Eva leaned against the desk now, watching me with a softness that didn't match the horror of her words. Oh, she was lying. She made choices. But we nudged them. Subtly. We told her this was a test of emotional resilience. That you were unstable, prone to detachment, and needed to be handled delicately. We let her think she was helping you. Her tone was clinical, unapologetic. You see, Lowell, people are most compliant when they think they're doing the right thing, especially when they love the person they're damaging. I wanted to be sick. I wanted to scream. Instead, I whispered the question that had been chewing through my mind like acid. Why me? Eva smiled like I had finally asked the right question. Because you're not interesting when you're angry. You're interesting when you're unraveling slowly. You have a high threshold for emotional dissonance. You internalize everything. You're the kind of subject who won't lash out, won't make noise. You'll absorb. That makes you valuable, predictable, measurable. She walked back around the desk and opened a drawer. From it, she pulled out a file with my name on the front. Inside, pages, charts, notes, transcripts. Things I'd said. Patterns I didn't even know I followed. You talk to yourself more when you're alone than when you're with people, she said, flipping through it. You crack your knuckles every time someone lies to you. You relive confrontations in your head for an average of 4 days. We didn't choose you at random. My mind was burning. And Daria? You'll just discard her? Eva raised an eyebrow. Daria already failed Phase 2. She reconnected emotionally. She deviated from protocol when she hid the key. She left that notebook for you to find, even if she doesn't consciously admit it. She wanted you to know. She wanted to be caught. That's not failure for you, but it is for her. I stood again. I didn't know what I was doing, only that I needed to get out. I didn't want her file. I didn't want mine. I didn't want to be told what parts of me had been dissected like an insect under glass. Eva didn't try to stop me. She just said one last thing as I reached for the door. Phase 3 was never about her, Lowell. It's about how far you'll go to undo what's already been done. I left without looking back. Drove without music. Barely saw the road. When I got home, Daria was in the kitchen. She was crying. Not dramatic sobs, just standing there with her hand over her mouth, tears running silently. I had never seen her like that before, not even during the miscarriages. I asked her what was wrong, but she couldn't speak. She just looked at me like I was the one who'd betrayed her. I walked toward her slowly. And then she whispered. I remembered things I wasn't supposed to. I think they did something to my memory. That was the moment everything snapped. Because for the first time since this started, I realized I might not be the only one who'd been rewritten. We didn't speak for a long time after she said that. I think they did something to my memory. Those words sat between us like a wound neither of us could reach. Daria looked smaller somehow. Her shoulders weren't squared the way they used to be when she was defensive. She wasn't performing anymore. There was no script in her eyes. Just raw, unfiltered fear. And I realized something in that moment. She had been manipulated too. Maybe more than me. I took her hand. She didn't pull away. We sat down on the floor like kids hiding from thunder, and she told me everything she could remember. About Eva. About the trial. About the questionnaires, the feedback sessions, the recordings. At first, they made her believe it was therapy. That it was about improving our communication. Testing how we dealt with emotional distance. But then came the rules. The punishments for breaking protocol. The The signed NDA that they said was just standard. She said things started to blur after that. Weeks vanished. Entire conversations she couldn't recall. And the guilt, it crushed her. She confessed she had almost left the notebook on purpose. She needed me to know, even if it meant they'd terminate her from the program. I didn't interrupt. I just listened. And for the first time in months, I believed her. Not because I wanted to, but because she looked like someone clawing her way back from something she didn't choose. We both had. We'd been puppets on different strings. Tested, studied, bent into shapes we didn't recognize. But we'd both pulled away when it mattered most. That had to mean something. The next morning, we left. No warning, no forwarding address. Packed up what we needed, emptied the savings account, and drove west. No plan, no job lined up. Just air. Clean, unknown air. We didn't talk much during the first few days on the road. We listened to old songs, shared drive-through fries, and slept in cheap motels with broken ice machines. But with every passing mile, I felt the static in my chest fade. Somewhere in Colorado, we burned the contract. Not symbolically. Literally. In a fire pit behind a roadside diner. The paper curled black, edges glowing red, and we stood there holding hands while the wind carried the ashes into the dark. We didn't cry. We didn't need to. We're still figuring things out. Healing isn't fast, and it's not pretty. Some days I still wake up flinching, expecting to find another message on my phone, another fake smile in her eyes. But it hasn't happened. Not once. Daria's different now. Softer. Honest in a way she never allowed herself to be before. And I'm different too. Less passive. Less willing to let silence fill the gaps where truth should live. We don't talk about phases anymore. Or protocols. Or experiments. That part of our life is over. But we do talk. Every day. Real conversations. Messy and unscripted. Sometimes we argue. Sometimes we cry. Sometimes we just sit in silence watching the sky shift from pink to gold. And that's enough. We chose each other again. Not because we were told to, not because we were afraid to start over, but because after everything, we both still wanted to be seen. To be known. Not studied. Not corrected. Just loved. They tried to program us. We chose to wake up. Together.